Cross Street, Strood, was born, yeah, and which was near Rochester. And when I joined the Wrens, actually, I was at Chatham, so I went back there then.
Yes.
But we left there when I was 8 because my father had worked in London in Walthamstow, and they were transferring to Southall, which was becoming industrialised.
In
and
West
there was a
London.
new factory built, so
Yes.
they said if any of the men wanted to move, they would put a deposit on a house for them, because Wimpy were building a lot of houses. And I always thought how wonderful, you know, for a firm to put a deposit on. But I've got the document, and it was £1 they paid as a deposit. Yes, so, and then, of course, there was the Depression in the 30s, and he went on short time. So I think they had a bit of a struggle to manage, because Grandad was living with us. And yes, so Mum took in 2 lodgers, so the house was a bit crowded, but it helped to pay the mortgage.
Just going back to your time at Strood, you said you were there for about 8 years, I think you said.
Pardon?
Did you say you were there at Strood for about 8 years? Is it?
I was 8 years old when we
that's right.
moved.
Can you tell me a little bit about your early life there?
Not a great deal. I can remember sitting on the front steps because, of course, you didn't have gardens in those days. And I can remember Mum, there was a man came to the door who'd served in the war, and he had no money, and he was going round repairing the chairs, the weaving of the chairs. And she gave him a meal, and I can remember that, so I wasn't very old then. And also there were 2 weddings, and going to school, of course.
That's right. What sort of school did you go to?
Just a primary school, yes.
Yes.
And I passed for the grammar school when we got to Southall. Eventually I did.
Yes.
But the schools were so different then to what they are now.
Yes.
And I mean, our teacher in Southall would take us for the weekend and give us a party, which you don't ever hear of a teacher doing that now, do you? And so that was interesting. But the Strood memories, I can remember Rochester Castle visiting. I've got a photograph of my brother and sister at Rochester Castle. And my brother went to the technical college there, and he was very good at woodwork, and they made a sedan chair because they had because Queen Elizabeth visited there, so they had a...
But that wouldn't have been Queen Elizabeth as she is now. That
No,
would have
the
been
first one.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
yes,
the first one,
yes,
yeah.
yes, of
I go
course.
back a bit, don't I? Yeah. So, yes, that, apart from any other memories, we used to have an off licence nearby, and Grandad used to send us over with a jug to get his drink. And, I mean, that wouldn't be allowed now, would it?
No. Now, you told me that Grandad was in the Falklands?
Yes, yes. 3 sessions he did there. Yes, and I did actually send, because they started a museum there after the Falklands War, and so I wrote and told them about Grandad, and I said I'd got photographs of when the Navy personnel used to wear the up hats, you know,
Yes.
and I sent them photographs, and I got a lovely letter back from them to thank me for that, yes, and
Yes.
Yes, what else?
Well, now, what about your father? Because I think you said to me that your father had served in the First World War.
Yes, he did, yeah. Well, he was in the army previously, and he came out of the army in 1913, and then, of course, was called back because he was on the reserve. And, yes, he was a sergeant, PE instructor.
Yes.
And so he went back, and I think he probably helped train them for going overseas.
He didn't
But-
go overseas himself.
Yes, he went to
Oh,
France.
he
Yes, he
did.
was at Ypres, wasn't it, where all the mud
Yes,
was?
yes.
And so I say I've got the star, the medal of that. Of course, they're
Yes.
quite rare, I believe.
Yes.
Or they're rare nowadays. Yes, yes, he was sandblaster. That was his job in the engineering. And during the war, he worked nights.
Yes.
And of interest there, perhaps, is there was quite a lot of stealing, and we had one neighbour who had suffered nerves after the First World War, and he couldn't work. But he got a job at the AEC, and he and his son used to take wood home, and they make dolls' houses to sell. So,
Oh, yes.
of course, they ended up being charged with thieving, and yes, so.
Were you in Southall by that time?
Yes, that was yeah. I left there. I was 20 when I joined up. So
In the Wrens?
yes, I'd volunteered because I thought if I got in, the war would be won. Yeah.
Yes.
And my sister didn't volunteer, but she got called up before I did.
Yes.
My brother went in the army for a short time, but he was in a reserved occupation at one of the aircraft firms, and so he joined up. I think it was the Indian Army, but he went in and they weren't doing what he anticipated they would do, so he came out and went back to civilian life. And yes, but my sister went to Ceylon, and she was there, quite some time as well, a couple of years, and yes, so.
So, just sort of thinking about your service with the Wrens, you joined up, what, in 1943? What were you doing before that?
I worked at in an office of a large 64 shops they had, greengrocers business, and I worked in their office in Acton, near London, and before that I'd worked at the AEC, but I wasn't, it was just filing clerk, and it bored me to tears.
Yes, right.
So I'd trained to do shorthand typing, so I did that. And so that was, some time I was there before I joined up, really.
Yes.
Yes.
So you joined up to the Wrens in 1943, and what happened then?
We went in for 3 weeks to decide whether we wanted to join them or they wanted us. Which in wartime, but that's the way it worked. And yes, and then from there I did, I think I was there for 3 months in Rochester, and we stayed in a house near the cathedral. It was quite a historic house, but I can't remember now. And after that I went to Great Yarmouth in Norfolk and was there for some considerable time. And then, as I say, I went overseas. I was in the signals office then, and I used to type out the charts for where all the mines were and everything. And I can remember they captured a German boat, and they brought them back to Yarmouth, and I can remember standing on the desks to see them, and they made them take their belts off, and I thought it was quite funny, and I got told off. Yes, I got told off, yes. But we used to do shifts there, and so you worked nights. And
That was in Norwich?
In Great Yarmouth, yeah.
Great Yarmouth,
in
sorry,
Great
yes.
Yarmouth,
Sorry,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, very, very cold it was there. Never been as cold. And no heating, of course, where we were billeted.
No.
It was in a hotel. And I think there was one fire in the lounge for the whole building, so that was really cold. You got into bed at night and your feet were frozen, and you couldn't get hot water bottles, could you? You couldn't get any comfort things at all.
No, not at all.
And just couldn't get an alarm clock, so if you didn't wake up, hard luck for your shift, Yes.
Golly.
Yes. Yes, it was a bit different to things these days. Yeah,
Yes,
it certainly
yes,
was.
So then you got posted overseas. Where did you go?
To Egypt, yes, and that's where I met Neville, because he'd they were reforming in Italy. They'd come through Sicily, and they were reforming Italy, and they'd got a plane going to Alexandria, and there were 2 seats, and they did a dip, to see who'd got the 2 seats, and he got one of them. So he came over and phoned up our quarters and said, were the 2 wrens who'd like to go out for a meal? So, of course, yes. So that's when I met him.
Yes.
And I saw him just for the weekend, but he always used to send an odd letter, very odd. It didn't come very often, but he always said, remember me, you see.
Yes.
So I was home, and he came home, and I was going to get engaged to a boyfriend, but I cancelled that because when Neville came, that was it. So that's when we got together, and we were married in 1949. Yeah, so, but he went all the way up through Europe, all the way up, ended up in Holland, and he put the flag up on this small town, and then he was taken home, and for a short time, and of course the war with Japan was still going on, so
Yes.
so he was sent out to Somalia, and Kenya he went to train soldiers to go there, and then of course the war finished.
Yes.
So yeah, so he had a war. I can't say that I had a war, because everywhere I went they'd had the disasters before I got there, so I didn't get involved in the disasters, but I knew all about them, of course.
You were part of the patching up afterwards.
Yes,
were you, in a
yes,
way?
yes.
Yes.
Well, I was telling Sylvia that my sister, when the soldiers and that whatever came back from the prisoner of war camps in Japan, they stopped off at Colombo, where Audrey was, and they asked the wrens if they would escort one of them, because they were in a very sad state, so take them to the shops because they wanted to buy things, and so he gave her a lovely brooch and bought material for his sister, because of course material being rationed at home like it was. Yes, yes. We used to get a docket for, because we bought our own clothes, of course, in the Wrens, and we used to get a docket for a pair of pyjamas, and the shops would change that for material. So that was a cheat, but it enabled you to have a dress made, and
Life goes on, yes.
Yes, it's amazing how you got round things. And
Where were you in Egypt? Was it Port Said?
Alexandria.
Oh, Alexandria.
Yes, Alexandria, yeah. Yes, I put a photograph in of where we met,
Yes.
because his friend came over as well, and they, as I say, the 2 of us and them. Yes, so.
Just
Yes.
take me through, if you would mind, what would be a typical day like in Alexandria, working in the Wrens?
Well, you went on at 8 o'clock in the morning till 12, and it was when the ships were in harbour. They would send in their mail, wanting
Yes.
to order stuff, and that, and we had to type that out and pass that on, and go to. We were at. It was called Razzle Tin, which was where the harbour was, Port Wharf service station, and we were allowed to go to the Royal Yacht Club
Yes.
for a cup of tea when you could afford it, yes, and which was quite an experience, really, to see how they lived. But yes, it was quite a nice place to work.
So how long were you there?
2 years. 2 years, yeah.
So through to about 1945.
Yes,
and
yeah.
therefore, I take it that your husband-to-be was in the 8th Army, was he?
No, he was in the Green Howard Regiment, and
Right.
no, it wasn't the 8th Army.
I only said that because the 8th Army was the sort of main
Yes.
army going through North Africa.
He was, you see, he was in Sicily and went across then to Italy. And
Yes.
as I say, they went up all the way. And I can remember him saying the cows hadn't been milked, so some of the fellas would milk the cows. And but he was a captain then, so he didn't do all the marching. He was in a jeep. But when he went to Kenya, he had a cheetah puppy. And he also killed a lion, and I've got the lion's tooth, because they came and asked him. This lion had knocked a woman's head off. She was getting the goat's milk in the thing that was hanging over, and she went to get it, and this lion was waiting, knocked her head off and killed her, of course, so she had to be killed. And so they came, because he was a very good marksman, and they said, if he would track her down. So they did track her down, and he shot her. And it was only afterwards, and I can always remember him, he hadn't told me this before, I can remember him saying they found she was pregnant, and his eyes filled with tears.
Yes.
But the villagers carried him shoulder high, and they wanted him to have a coat, but he didn't want that, so they gave him a tooth.
Right.
And they made him a knife, which I've still got, yes. So, yes, his memories were very profound.
Yes, I
really,
bet.
Yes.
Coming back to before you joined the Wrens, because there's a sort of period there where, 1940 is well known for the Blitz.
Yeah.
What do you remember of that?
Well, going down into the shelter.
Yes.
And if my father had a cold, everybody knew about it. And he'd sneeze and blow. And I had to sleep at the far end because I was short, and you couldn't have your legs out straight. They were up on the wall. And this night, we'd been down there for days and days and days. And I can always remember him sneezing, and I said, "It's no good. I don't care if I get killed. I can't stand this any longer." And I went running up the path to get home, and the shrapnel was coming down, of course.
Yes.
So I never went in it again. I thought, well, if I survive, I survive. And yes, but
did you have bombs landing near you? Or
we had one round the corner, but it was only a small bomb.
Yes.
But it damaged their house quite severely.
Yes.
But when we were at work, if there was an air raid warning, you had to take your work with you to the shelter to do what you could. Can you imagine that these days? And yes, but of course they were after the AEC because, as I say, they were, making armaments really.
Yes.
And and I think we had the railway line and we had the canal, so they just followed that down. The Germans, and I can remember the first one that came over, and my dad said, "Look, you can hear the engine. That's a German plane."
Yes,
because it made a distinctive noise. Yes, there was no real entertainment. I can remember just after the bombing had started, we did get to the pictures, but they closed those after a while. But I can remember coming home and seeing all the fires over London, because we were about 8 miles from London. So, but we had all the balloons all round, supposedly to protect.
Yes.
They looked very attractive actually when the sun shone on them.
Did they billow? Were they fully inflated or just
they were fully
inflated?
inflated. They were fully inflated,
right.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. We didn't actually have them in Southall. They were just, I think Ealing had them, was just down the road.
Yes.
Yeah, so... but the rationing in those days was quite amusing because my mother had her books at 2 different shops, so that if they got bargains at one, she could get that. And she used to trade her bacon coupons for bits of bacon, which she used to fry to get the fat from.
Yes.
And with that fat, she made the pastry. And she used to make a bacon and onion pie, which was potato, which was very tasty. And they used to warm their tea to get as much as they could out of it. Yeah. Before tea bags, wasn't it? Yes.
Very much so.
Yeah, yes.
And I guess you probably did use the tea leaves more than once.
Yeah, yes, I did, yes.
Yes.
And then I think it was put down on the carpet then to lift up the dirt. All these things they did. And we had chickens. Dad got chickens. So we had fresh eggs. Yes, and I know when I came home from the forces, Mum had used my music satchel for getting the chicken feed because you didn't have bags, so
No.
that was used for that. So I was a bit... And my toys were given away because children didn't have many toys.
No, quite.
So there wasn't any of those left when I came home, and books as well. Because what do? You've got to provide for other children, haven't you?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what about things like Christmas? Go back to before the war.
Oh, yes, well, it used to be decorated. My father used to festoon the ceiling. When you think the dust it all collected, but...
Yes.
And, yes, it did. But, yes, we used to have good Christmases. Ate far too much, of course. Mum used to make an enormous Christmas cake, which... you'd had turkey dinner and you got tea with this big Christmas cake and you did want a slice.
Yes.
And so I had a slice and I just couldn't eat it. And my dad said, your eyes are bigger than your belly. Because it was, about, I don't know, about 5 or 6 inches tall, I suppose, with thick icing on. And, yes, but... yes, it was it's a difficult time, I think. When you're young, though, you don't really... you can look back on it, can't you?
Yes.
And think how hard it was. But at the time, you've got your mum and dad, and they look after you, don't they? So
Indeed, yes.
You didn't really feel... I can't remember them ever showing their worries to us.
No.
No.
You were 16 when war broke out.
Yes.
What do you remember of that time? Do you remember the announcement or anything like that?
Oh, I can remember that. And I know I said to Mum about Christmas and, you've got to get all the ingredients for the Christmas cake. And she said, well, yes, if I don't get them now, they'll all be gone. And, yes, it was a difficult time. It was, yes. And as I say, we'd had lodgers previously. We still carried on, I think, during the beginning of the war, because Mum looked after them well, so if someone had left, there was always someone who wanted to come.
Yes.
Yes, we had several people. Yes, because Southall changed so much. It was a very exclusive place previously, and then, of course, it was more or less in the country. But we had a lovely park, which I don't suppose is still there. And we used to have our sports day there, and I never won any races.
This was at school?
Yeah,
presumably,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
What school did you go to?
Southall Grammar School eventually.
Yes.
I was at North Road Primary School previously. Yes, but as I say, it's all Indian now, I believe. It's totally, taken over by the Indians.
Yes.
Because, of course, all the factories, Hoover was there and all the others. So That's what they come for, don't they? The labour-intensive places.
Yeah.
Yes, and I believe the cinemas became mosques.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
because we used to have lovely cinemas, I mean, they were palatial, not like they are now.
If you went to the cinema, what would you expect to see? Can you remember any of the films you saw?
I think the main one is Anne of Green Gables, I can remember
yes.
seeing. And I know we took, because children weren't allowed to go in on their own, so Mum used to take my sister and I, and we always used to take another child in with us.
Yes.
It was what did it cost? Was it 9p for us and 1 6 for Mum, something like that? So very cheap to what it is nowadays.
And it wouldn't just have been Anne of Green Gables, there would have been a supporting film of some sort as well?
Yes, and you could go in halfway through and you could sit and watch it all through again. And I can remember doing that once in Withington, where I live now, and my friend and I had gone, and she was the same age as me, and thought, oh, we can wait and see it all through again. But of course the manager came and said, oh no, that's it, there's one performance and that's it. yeah, you used to get because on a Friday evening they always had a talent show as well.
Yes.
Which was quite interesting. Yes. But,
now, when or after war started and you were approaching 20, if you like, what sort of social life did you have? I mean, you mentioned, I think, a boyfriend.
Well, I didn't have boyfriends till I was 17, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'd gone on holiday and met somebody there. He lived in Hampstead. And when the Blitz started, you know, he wanted to come over and he wanted me to go over there and meet his parents, and my mother said, you're not going there because there's all the bombing. So I didn't go. So that finished that, yeah. Yeah, so easy, you see.
Yes.
Yes, the social life, you had records, and you'd take some of your records to a friend's house and you'd sit and listen to those.
Yes.
And, as I say, cinemas were not so good.
You didn't go dancing, anything like that?
No. I went to the theatre once. I saw Dancing Years. That must have been early, I think. Yes, and I can remember just before the war, we went to Shepherd's Bush Empire, and Me and My Girl was on then.
Oh, yes.
That very popular one.
Yes.
Yes. Funnily enough, when first time we went to America, as our son's over there, and he took us into New York to the Radio City, and we saw the variety show there, but he also took us to see Me and My Girl, which was on there. Mm-hmm. And it was just the same. Everybody was joining in all the songs.
Let's go back. I mean, when did you... you came back from Egypt. Was that before the end of war in Europe, or was it before or after?
Oh no, it was after. No, we had the when I left, it had just been the European. We'd invaded Europe.
Yes.
Yes, and it was yes, I was there for, and we had a chef who'd started to make a cake because he felt the war was coming to an end, but it hadn't set the icing, so we had to have it in 2 separate bits. But we used to make our entertainment there. We had New Year's dance, and at Christmas time, the first Christmas I was there, well, we arrived on I think it was December the 4th, and when we got to Alexandria, we were billeted in the Sacre-Cœur, the convent, and when I got there, they said, "Oh, we're glad 3 of you have come, because then you can do regulating duty for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day." Yes, so they got the 3 of us. Yes.
Was that in 1943? When you went to Alexandria? No, it would have been after.
Yes, yes, I think...
or 44 maybe.
I was 21 before I went, just before I went, so that would be 44.
44,
yes.
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 So how did you travel to Egypt?
Boat, by boat, Windsor Castle boat.
Oh, right.
Took 10 days.
Where did you leave from?
At Liverpool, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and one of the soldiers had, I don't know how, but his rifle had gone off and he'd shot somebody, so that delayed us. But yes, they gave us bell bottoms just in case we were sunk, and I couldn't swim. I'd learnt to swim, but I'd never actually done it. But I always said if I needed, I knew I could do it. You see, so
explain to me what bell bottoms are. Because I know bell bottoms as in sailors.
They were the sailors. They were the
right.
sailors' trousers with a flap that came down, so it was buttoned here. I don't think I ever wore them, actually. Yes, yes, but that's what we were issued with, just in case. But when we came home, our Wren officer wouldn't allow us to go on the boat because it was a French boat, and she said it was filthy. So she made all our quarters be fumigated before we went on. It certainly wasn't the same going home as it was coming out.
Yes.
Yes, but I know the first couple of days, I think the dining room was deserted because everybody was sick, because we went through the Bay of Biscay. And
this
it was
on the Windsor Castle, is it?
Yes, and it was very rough. And yes.
And then on through the Mediterranean?
Pardon?
Did you go through the Mediterranean?
Yes, oh yes. We didn't stop off anywhere, of course, but
just straight to.
I can't say. I felt isolated from England, really. Of course, you are isolated on the boat, aren't you?
You are, yes.
Yes, and most odd feeling.
I mean, the route for the Windsor Castle was presumably around by Northern Ireland. You would have gone around the top.
Yes.
It'd be Liverpool and then upwards past Glasgow
and then we came down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, but it was very rough. But I know the first time you could go and have a meal, it was.
Not many people there.
No. But when I was at Great Yarmouth, we were taken out in a boat because there were minesweepers at Great Yarmouth.
Yes.
And we were taken out in a boat and just to experience what it was like to go out to sea. And one of the girls brought some horrible lamb stewy bones, which of course made everybody feel sick to see those. She thought it was funny, but we didn't. But that was quite interesting.
Yes.
And we were across the water to where the RAF boats were, so we used to see those going out all the time.
Yes.
And we used to have church parade, of course, every Sunday morning, and I was always delegated because I used to go to church, and it began to annoy me that nobody else wanted to go, because you were out in the cold for this church service. And I said to our petty officer, why don't you go? Oh, he said, no, I'm a Muslim. So he said, there's no facilities for Muslims, so he wasn't, but that's how he got out of it, yes. Yes, but doing night watch wasn't very pleasant because you had to be awake, and not that we were very busy at night. But, if there was anything happened, you had to pass the information on. Yes.
So coming back from Egypt, you were on this French boat. Did that go straight back to England?
Yes, we saw the White Cliffs of Dover. Came into Southampton, and went from Southampton. We went. Where did we go then? We went to Rochester, I think. Yes, and you were allowed a bit of leave, and then you had to go back and unload all your gear.
Yes.
And I can remember having a water bottle, and I couldn't get anybody to take it because what did I want a water bottle for? And one of the sailors said, "Oh, just put it behind a door." So that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you came back after D-Day, VE Day.
VE Day. Yeah.
But presumably before VJ Day, which would have been in August, I think.
No, I came home after VJ Day.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Right.
No, I left when VE Day had happened.
Yes.
And I was there for VJ Day in Egypt, yes.
Yes, so you were
Yes.
talking about the autumn of 1945.
Yes,
then.
yes. They were odd in Egypt, you know. They had German helmets over the British helmets on the signs all round because they wanted the Germans to win.
Oh.
Yes. Might have been a different setup if they had, but there you go. Yes.
Did you notice that, did you come into contact with any of the Egyptian public?
Little boy who used to clean my shoes for me.
Yes.
And when I left, I gave him my shoe cleaning set. And another little boy, when we came off where we were based, was selling fruit. And so I'd bought a bag of fruit one day and got into the lorry, and the bag burst and they all went over the road, but we were setting off. But the next time I saw him, he gave them to me. So.
Oh, that was nice.
Yes, a very honest little boy he was, yeah.
Yes.
He wanted to come to England. He spoke fairly good English. And I want to come to England. You send for me and I can come to England, yes. So, yes. But we had, they used to do the cooking for us, and I can remember one evening I used to make the tea for 6 o'clock, and I went over to make the tea, and they were all asleep on the benches, and there was a tray of baked beans, and it was covered in cockroaches, and I thought, yes. I didn't mention it when I got back because I thought it'd put the lads off. Yes.
Because there's nothing like the Middle Eastern cockroach, is there?
No.
And did you experience those in your quarters as well?
No, it didn't. No. It was just there in the kitchens, yes. But it was them sleeping on the benches, you know, with all the food around, getting ready for breakfast, and
oh dear.
yes.
So you came back to England towards the end of 1945. Were you demobbed at that time?
Yes, and I got a job at Australia House with the Naval Office there because they were still based there. And they had a cupboard full of all the knitted garments that the women in Australia had sent, and, help yourself, take what you want, you see. Yes, so we did quite well with that. And I think there was sea boot stocking wool, and and my sister bought some khaki wool, and she'd been told if you boiled it, you would get a different colour, which was, who would think that you could boil it? And it was pink, one skein, and one skein was green. So with the sea boot stocking wool, we made a fair cardigan for ourselves. And so these are my memories of war, aren't they? Not shooting people, no.
No, but there is, I think there are not many I've met who were actually involved in the actual business of shooting.
No. Well, never was a lot.
Yes.
A lot, yes. So I know there was one sniper when they were waiting to go into Rome, and the Americans wanted to take Rome. So Neville said they were waiting nearly 3 weeks before the Americans came near to take Rome.
Yes.
And where they were based, if they wanted to go to the toilet, the Germans had got a sniper, and he would shoot them. So Neville got detailed to go and get this sniper, and he did. He did, but yes, yes.
Not a pleasant business.
Yes, yes. Yes, he went through a lot because he volunteered, and I mean, he was only 17 when he volunteered, so he was very young then, yes.
Yes, yes indeed.
Yes,
well, what year was he born? What year was Neville born?
1923. No, that was me, 1924.
So he was a year younger than you.
Yes,
That's
yes,
right,
my
yes.
toy boy. Yeah.
Your toy boy.
My toy boy, yeah. Yeah.
So, war's come to an end. You've been demobbed. You're working at Australia House. What happens then? What was your life then? Because you didn't get married immediately, did you?
No, well, I was getting engaged to a sailor boyfriend I had, and we were going to get married. But then, as I say, Neville came home, and things weren't working out with Harry. So I changed my mind. So he said, "Well, if you want to come and live in Manchester, you know." And I thought, oh, I don't know. And my dad wasn't keen on me going because I think his family had all had TB. And he said, if you go there to the north, you know. But I decided I'd come out, and so I was in lodgings. And I think it was, you know, a year or so we got engaged, and then we were saving up to get married. So that's...
Yes.
1949, yeah.
So you're in Manchester, what, about 1946, 47? In lodgings?
47, I
47,
think. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
What were you doing in Manchester? Were you working?
Yes, I worked for a steel company originally, and then I went to insurance. And so I was there and that was near Manchester Cathedral, which had been bombed in that area.
Yes.
And it was a very cold office. Yes, and I sat with a curtain at the back of me and open windows behind, so it was very cold, yeah. There wasn't any central heating there, so...
What was the state of Manchester at that time?
Well, there was a lot being repaired, yes, and yes, Withy Grove. I can remember Withy Grove because one of the newspaper offices was there, and we used to go over there to have a coffee. So nothing where we actually worked, not like nowadays, you know.
No. And where were you living at that time in Manchester?
In Fallowfield. In Fallowfield, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I lived with an elderly lady, quite near Plattfields we were. And, yes.
So what was life like there? Did you go out to entertainment?
Well, we were at the church, so you got all the social life with the church.
Yes.
And... which they refurbished, and it was never the same. So then I went to St Paul's in Withington, yes.
Yes.
Not able to go so much now, am I?
No. So you moved to Withington, and did you spend your married life there?
No, we spent it in Fallowfield.
In Fallowfield,
We
yes.
had 2 rooms, because you couldn't get houses or flats. And we had 2 rooms, and then... we said we were going for buying a house, and we went to look at one, I think, and he just kept us hanging on until he decided whether he was going to sell, and then he didn't. So we ended up with an old Victorian house for which Neville paid £5 a month mortgage, and he was actually earning about that a week, I think, so... It was
just about live on that.
Well, that was how it was in those days, wasn't it?
Yes.
You didn't have a card to just spend. when I bought, I wanted a little table for the hall, and I said I'd get it on HP. And of course, they wanted to know Neville's details, where he worked, because it was nothing to do with, the money couldn't come from me. So,
No.
yes,
You weren't allowed to buy a house or to have.
No, it
anything
wasn't.
like an
It wasn't
HP.
as easy. Perhaps it's too easy nowadays. I mean, you get them moving in with one another, don't you? And
Yes.
they get a house together, and it splits up. It's no good.
If you were to think back over your life, and in particularly the war years, did those war years in any way influence you, do you think, in the way you've lived since?
I think with joining up, they make you stand on your own 2 feet. Because my mother was quite a dominant person, and she didn't want you to go anywhere. Didn't like you even going, when I was, 16, didn't even want you to go. I had an interview with Reuters in London, and it was when the bombing was on. She didn't want me to go for that interview. I didn't get the job, of course, but yeah, she was quite dominant, really, in that way. She was the boss. She was the boss.
So by going into the Wrens, that broke to some extent.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
But she would have tried to recover her position after you returned, I assume.
Well, I can remember when I joined up, and she'd said the same thing to my sister. If you get into trouble, don't think you can come back here. And I didn't know what she was talking about. No. But she'd come from with her dad, because her mother died when she was 18, and she stayed home to look after the 3 young children and my grandfather. So
Yes.
I suppose she'd been used to being the boss, really.
She was the matriarch of the
Yes,
family.
yes, she was.
Yes.
I mean, she made a good home, and
Yes.
I was counting how many people she'd looked after through her life. 16 people in total.
Yes.
Not many people can say that these days, no.
So, in a way, the war enabled you to break away from those sorts of constraints. But do you think in other ways life has been influenced for you as a result of the war? I mean, the way you, look at things?
Well, I think I used to think you didn't need family, but you do. Because when I look around now, people who have family near, I mean, I have nieces and nephews, and I don't know how long it is since, because they live Cambridge and one place and another, because my sister died and left 2 children. And but my husband wasn't one for going visiting relatives or staying with relatives. So we never went anywhere, really, to see people like that. He liked to be at home. I think what he'd gone through during the war probably influenced him in that respect a lot. Yes, he did a lot of voluntary work at the Barnes Hospital. He did about 5 years there. Nearly every day he used to go.
Yes.
And do jobs there. I worked at the Citizens Advice Bureau for a time, and at the Imperial Cancer offices in Withington. We did, we returned a bit. That's what we felt we were doing. Yeah.
Yes. If you were to advise youngsters today about anything, what would your advice to them be?
To not neglect your family, I think, is the main thing. You don't realise that until you get old. No. Because as I say, I've 2 nieces, but if they come, well, one comes about once a month, the other one about once a year. So
Everyone's different, I guess.
yes, 'cause they're away. They're in Bedfordshire and Wales, so they've got their own families,
Yes.
So yes, it suddenly hits you, really.
Did you have children?
I've got one son.
One
yes,
son.
yes, yes, yes. He's in Seattle.
You did mention that
Yes.
earlier. That's right. So you've
Yeah.
been across to America.
Yeah. Oh,
to
yes.
see them.
We had our golden wedding there, and at the World Trade Center, we were in the restaurant right at the top, 32 floors up. So, and that was in the August as the bombing helped in September. I never appreciated until there was a programme on that they reckon it was the aluminium in the plane that caused the fire, because it ignited with the water and everything, yeah. And that's what caused the explosion, they reckon. I don't know. I mean, there was enough when the planes went in, wasn't there?
This was in the World Trade Center in New York.
Yes, it was very bad, that, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed it was.
My husband got a tape recorder, and I can remember, this was a funny incident, I can remember him taking down when Mum and Dad were living in Surrey then, and he was showing it to my dad. My dad said to him, I bet you have some fun with this. He said, oh, yes, I do. People don't know you're listening to them. And you record it, yeah. So I've got him on the tape, and I've got my mother playing the piano. And my sister, she was a keen Arsenal supporter and had come up for one of the matches. So I've got her, yes.
All valuable for them. And we're a very lucky generation, I think, that we have those facilities.
Yes, yes. Oh, yes, there's such a lot, isn't there?
Yes.
Really. Mind you, I think it sometimes gets a bit too crowded, doesn't it? Because they can't miss a photograph, can they? And yes, and I've got a photograph of that, let me find it. And they flick, 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 flick. Takes them ages to find. Whereas if you've got one in your hand, totally different, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, totally different, yes.
Yes, tell me about the jaundice.
Well, I had jaundice, and it was dreadful, absolutely dreadful. And I was on watch, and the pain I was experiencing, and they said, you've got to go to sick bay, you see, when you come out. So I came out, and my friend was a great one to give you bicarbonated soda if you felt sick. So I took that, and of course I was sick. So I went to the hospital, and I'd gone a bit yellow by this time. And they took me in, and they gave me a glass of orange juice, which was made with blood oranges, so it looked unattractive. And I lost quite a bit of weight. And after that, I went to Cairo on sick leave, which place to go for sick leave, and stayed at the YMCA there. And YWCA, wasn't it? Young Women's.
Would be, yes.
Yes. And had breakfast in bed, which was very nice. And plenty of curries, of course, which I wasn't all that into at that time. But I can remember them bringing the bits and pieces you could put on, and it was like a tea trolley with all the different items. And yes, that was interesting. And I came back. I'd gone in the train, and one girl said she'd come in a bus, a lorry, and she said, if you want to swap, you can go back in the lorry and I'll go on the train. So we did that. So we went across all the desert and got back to Alexandria. Yes, yes, it was I always remember the convent had a covering over something like that. And I lifted it up one day, and it was Jesus with all, like the Catholics do have, don't they?
Yes.
And so they'd covered that up, yes. Yes, but it was quite a good place to stay, I suppose, really.
So you did get to see Cairo. Did you see the pyramids?
Yes, I saw the pyramids, yeah.
Yes.
When it wasn't all, I believe it's built round now, isn't it? A lot. Yes. Yes, one of the girls had an American boyfriend, and he'd been climbing up to the top and he slipped and fell and was killed.
Yeah.
So that was very upsetting for her.
Yes.
Yes, and yes. Lots of funny experiences like that, you see. Yes. Not very pleasant.
No.
Yes.
Any other memories of Egypt?
I can remember getting food poisoning once, and I was taken back to quarters in the captain's jeep, and of course there was nothing to. You weren't belted in. I can remember nearly falling out of it several times, but got home, and that was fish, because they used to have dried fish, and I think it was a bit off probably. Yes, but the fruit was good.
Yes.
I didn't like the sweet potatoes that they gave us with meals, and I can remember having mashed potato, spinach and a fried egg, and I just used to mash them all up together because it was horrible. It was horrible. Yes, but if you didn't eat it, you see, you starved.
You didn't get anything else?
Yes.
Yeah.
We used to go into town and get a sticky bun when we were paid, and a drink. We used to go into town now and again.
And that was in Alexandria? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And the Corniche was lovely in Alexandria to walk along. We used to walk along that into town sometimes. Yes. I don't sound very cheerful, do I?
What was your uniform?
What was my uniform? Well, you got two uniforms and 2 shirts, I think. And after that, you got a clothing allowance. I can't remember. It wasn't very much. You bought your own. I mean, you don't buy your own in the army, do you? But in the Navy, you do. That's how we were able to get a length of material.
Yes.
Yeah, because we were buying our pyjamas, yeah. Yes, when I first went to Yarmouth, I didn't know a soul. And there were 2 girls, and they said, well, you can come and sit with us if you like, because they just bought a new book, Rebecca.
Yes.
So they were making night dresses because their husbands were in the army, and they wanted a nice night dress for when they came home. And so I used to go over there, and I read them Rebecca whilst they sewed.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I can remember sitting on the pier and feeling very, very miserable. And I thought, what am I doing here? And there was an older soldier, and he said, what's the matter with you? And I said, well, I just feel homesick, I suppose. And he talked to me, and he was very kind. So I got over it. And that's what I say. It made you on your own, stand on your own feet, because in the Navy, you didn't go en masse as a regiment. You went to replace somebody, and that's what happened, you see. Oh.
Yes.
I can remember going to Cambridge with a friend and her aunt. They had a lovely apple tree, and she filled my gas mask case with apples. And, yes, and that was a nice weekend. But the trains were packed. I mean, they say about them being packed now. Well, they weren't in those days just the same, so... Because there weren't the trains, were there? So,
no.
No.
Because you wore a uniform, presumably you had priority, did you?
Well, you got a rail ticket, but no, you didn't. You just got on the train and pushed in as best you could, because the corridors were packed out. So I'll say, with all these apples in the gas mask, I used to say to them, help yourself, because I thought it wasn't the thing to do to put apples in with the gas mask.
Not really.
No.
But did you ever use your gas mask?
No, it was just there in case, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Pam, if I sense we're probably coming towards the end, unless there's anything else you can think of that you'd like to talk about. But if there isn't, then what I would say is thank you very much indeed for taking the time and coming to talk to us.